We want to bring in Fox Weather hurricane specialist Bryan Norcross. As we wait on that advisory, Bryan, this thing is moving 21 miles an hour.
Yeah, it's moving forward and going to accelerate and then on out to sea. The good thing is Bermuda is ready for this kind of thing. They are a fortified island if ever there was one. You know, there's been a lot of discussion the last few days since early in the week when Melissa peaked before it made landfall in Jamaica. How strong exactly was it? And at the time that was all happening at the National Hurricane Center, you can bet there was a lot of discussion about how strong the storm actually was. In fact, Dr. Jack Bevan actually put out this message within the discussion. It should be noted that Melissa's landfall intensity is among the strongest ever recorded in the Atlantic Basin, and it will take extensive post-analysis to determine exactly where it ranks. So in other words, they're going to go look at it, as we've been discussing this week, after the fact and see what it shows. And one of the reasons that the system is being evaluated is because the data was a little conflicting at the time. It actually showed a stronger storm than the unbelievable 185. The computer estimate here, you can see, was up at 215 miles per hour at the peak. And then what exactly does that mean, and what is the computer estimate? Well, it's called the advanced Dvorak technique. The name Dvorak left my brain for just one moment there. The advanced Dvorak, Vern Dvorak was the guy that figured out how to look from a satellite and look at it and estimate the wind speed. And so it only uses satellite data, more than one satellite sometimes. It works around the world because we have satellite data around the world. It finds the center. Sometimes you can't even see it, but it analyzes and finds the center, finds the rain bands, measures the temperatures of the eye and the surrounding temperatures, and then kind of pattern matches and says, okay, this is how intense that storm is, and came out at 215. And then a dropson, which is an instrument package out of one of the NOAA planes, actually measured as the system was approaching Jamaica, 198 miles per hour at the surface and 252 not too far above. So what does all that mean, and what happens with it? Well, let's bring in Dr. Michael Brennan, the director of the National Hurricane Center. Mike, this has been quite a week for you and us and your forecasters there, including Dr. Jack Bevan, who wrote that statement. I'm sure there's a lot of analysis going on at the Hurricane Center on whether to accept that dropson or whether to say, oh, that was not representative of the circulation. Can you go through what you guys were thinking and how you make the decisions in real time on exactly how strong the storm is when you have some conflicting information?
Yeah, I mean, it's rare that all the information gives you one answer, but you know, the most valuable, sort of the most reliable data we have is looking at the flight level winds from the Hurricane Hunter aircraft, adjusting them down to the surface, looking at what the central pressure is. Those surface winds off the dropsons are really almost more like a wind gust and not necessarily representative of the sustained wind. So we tend to look at the average wind in the lowest 150 meters of the dropson and then adjust that down to what we think is representative of a 10-meter wind. So there's all these pieces of data coming in. We had both the NOAA and the Air Force Hurricane Hunters in Melissa on Tuesday morning when it was reaching its peak intensity. But as Jack noted in that discussion, after every storm, we go back and look at all the data in the totality of it, including some data that we may not have gotten in real time. We may get pressure estimates or pressure measurements from people on the ground in Jamaica that we haven't been able to get a hold of yet. There could be wind observations that come in after the event. And so we'll take a sum total look at all that data together in the aftermath of the event in the weeks and months to come and come up with our final best track intensity estimate. But even those we have with aircraft data, good to probably only within about 10%. And when you're up at 180, 190 miles per hour, those are some pretty big uncertainty bars, and that's not unusual for these very intense hurricanes.
Yeah, in any case, it was an incredible hurricane.
Yeah.
In fact, I can't ever recall seeing when we looked at that satellite and we saw that perfect disk, this pristine hurricane. Even my mind looked back to Patricia in off the coast of Mexico in 2015 as being one of those, but this one even seemed more extremely perfect. I don't know, what was your impression when you saw it? And I know everybody was looking at it there at the Hurricane Center as this was developing Monday and Tuesday.
Yeah, I think, Brian, over the past few years, how many of those sort of kind of horrifying satellite presentations we've seen of these, very powerful hurricanes. And I think the thing that struck me the most about Melissa was how it maintained that very stable, intense eye structure for almost more than a day. We go all the way back to Monday morning when it became Category 5 and maintained that intensity. And it never really tried to go through an eye wall replacement cycle that we often typically see in these very powerful hurricanes. And then on Tuesday morning, it intensified even further. We actually saw the eye get a little bigger in the early morning hours on Tuesday. It was just unfortunately, about as textbook satellite presentation as you'll ever see for a powerful hurricane. And as a result, Melissa is up in that upper echelon of the most intense hurricanes we've ever seen.
Yeah, Mike, the forecasting was really quite spectacular on this, and my sense was that you guys, to some degree, settled on this what's called the HICA HCCA, which is a smart average of the key models plus the Google DeepMind model. That seemed to be, I know that was mentioned a lot in the discussion, the average of those two as a good source for the final forecast. Were you must feel good about the forecasting in general, but is that fair to say that the HICA and the Google DeepMind have settled in as being probably the best two that you have to use as a source for the final forecast?
Yeah, they've both been pretty strong performers this year. And as you know, the Google DeepMind model is pretty new this year. So we've been sort of learning how to use that, how it performs as we've gone through the hurricane season. So we've been able to take advantage of that knowledge we've gained during the year and then able to apply that in real-time operations.
Yeah, and the forecast really, and congratulations to everybody there, because there were some curveballs that the models were throwing at you, and the choices that you made were really very good. Let's talk just quickly about what Melissa is doing now. How would you characterize the storm? The eye is up to about 70 miles across now. What can Bermuda expect later today?
Yeah, Bermuda's going to get sort of a quick hit. They're probably going to stay out of the inner core of the storm, but you certainly could get inside the 50-knot wind radii, see high-end tropical storm force winds, hurricane force gusts. There is some elevation on Bermuda, so that will play a role in the peak winds they see at that high elevation. Melissa looks like a storm that's moving out of the tropics and into the subtropics as we get late into the season. It's starting to have that less tropical look. The inner core obviously came apart after it moved over Jamaica and Cuba, so it's not going to gain that real tight inner core again. But the waters are still plenty warm, and the environment's conducive for it to be a pretty strong hurricane as it goes by. It's going to be fast, so not a lot of rainfall, a quick hit of strong winds. But as you noted at the beginning, Bermuda's pretty used to this kind of wind event, and they see this multiple times a year and have seen it several times this hurricane season already.
Yeah, the fourth go-round for them. All right, Dr. Mike Brennan, Director of the National Hurricane Center. Mike, thanks so much for being with us, and thanks to everybody there for your great work during the storm. We appreciate it, and we know the Jamaicans appreciate it very much as well, and everybody in the Caribbean. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Brian.
All right, Stephen and Marissa, so this is going to be an interesting reanalysis of this storm, post-analysis of the storm come the spring, but there is a lot of data, having seen them go through this before with complicated storms, that will come in after the fact, and that will lead to the bottom line that we'll get probably in March or April or around that time frame.
Yeah, it was. I was listening to every word. It was a fascinating discussion to have with Mike, because you look at how that storm was, and him calling this, just the appearance of it, a stable-looking structure, giving it that intensity that you only see with a few on planet Earth. Fascinating. Thanks for bringing us that, Bryan. Of course, we'll continue to watch Melissa as well. Fox Weather Hurricane Specialist Bryan Norcross, appreciate it.